session, we're going to be talking about the second half of House Bill 488, which deals with state licensing and credentials, specifically for occupational licenses that are issued by the different agencies across the state. So I think that, the governor's message in the video is a message that I hear all the time, and it's genuine. He genuinely cares about this issue. Credit for military training experience, both on the education side and also the state occupational side. So today we're just going to be talking a little bit about some of those efforts, and Danny will start with some of the historical background.
You can see from my bio some of the background I've had around this area. I was the first GI Promise Administrator originally appointed by the Board of Regents back in 2008 with the initial in-state tuition initiative. I remember at the time thinking, oh, that's great. They wanted me to go out and do outreach and tell them that's how great the system was. And I was like, well, you don't even know what your product looks like. So that's what kind of kicked off a lot of the efforts around trying to get better program offices, military, credit for military education and training. There's been some efforts going back as far as 2007, before our department was even created with the Governor's Office of Veterans Affairs, related to licensing and certification, particularly in relation to reserve component folks, and they're getting continuing education, them being able to renew licenses when they're activated, that kind of stuff. Obviously in 2008 was a pretty big year for this type of stuff. Governor Strickland issued the GI Promise Executive Order that created for the first in the country in-state tuition for military members, veterans, and their spouses. We codified that in House Bill 450 that simplified the eligibility. I think originally eligibility was tied as to whether or not you could get GI Bill. We were like, why do you care how they pay for it as long as they're going to school here? And it's also why, honestly, I think earlier today I was in the session with Mr. Myers, Mr. DeShant, and they were talking about tracking. Like, do we track dependents? Like, well, I sure hope you are, because dependents are eligible for in-state tuition if they're coming in from out of state. And I hate to think that because we're not asking the question, that any dependents or spouses or veterans may be going to school at full out-of-state tuition. With the new administration, we saw some significant opportunities. DVS, by and large, except for the GI Promise, wasn't hugely involved in education and employment items. When Governor Kasich came on board, he obviously made a very big push on employment issues, on jobs, and with an overall realignment of the workforce system in Ohio to the benefit of employers and job seekers. We saw in that some opportunity to have a component of that improve the system that exists in the state for veterans. And so for the first time, we made a proposal to the governor's office to ensure that we would be a part of that discussion when it came down to, what is the workforce system like? Education and employment are inherently linked, and in having some involvement with that. And we had some really successes too. House Bill 337 that year, Public Safety actually came to us and said, hey, we'd like to make it easier for veterans to get commercial driver's license. It's a high demand occupation, and it's something that military veterans, particularly those in transportation branches, even those driving smaller trucks, something like that, necessarily branches, do have a lot of experience with. So we're very pleased and happy to do that. In 2012, we started to have a lot more experience a little bit. We worked a little bit as far as trying to ease the existing licensing provisions for reserve component members and also active component folks related to continuing education. And for the first time, we had the medical board step up to make it simpler for military physician's assistants to come out of the service and get licensed as physician's assistants. And that was actually in direct response. A gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Bales came out of the Army as a physician assistant, got hired by Marietta College to be their staff physician assistant, but found that he couldn't get licensed in Ohio. And so within probably the quickest I've ever seen any type of government action, the medical board actually got the rules adjusted within a matter of 2 months or so. They had changed their rules so that that person could get licensed and begin working at Marietta College. Out of that kind of grew, working with our partners here in the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation, 4 key strategies. He's going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But for the first time, we had serious executive level attention on the concept of improving systems to better prepare veterans or better prepare our system to assist veterans in entering the workforce. And that's when we first had the executive order published that kind of directed all of our state partners and our friends in the universities and stuff to begin to identify recommendations in 2 major areas. education, higher education, and then licensing and certification. Out of that grew essentially two pieces of legislation. The first was House Bill 98, which was early on in this 130th General Assembly. That focused mainly on professional certification and licensing. And workforce transformation has really been helping to bird dog. I think we're tracking 38 licensing authorities and ensuring that they do the requisite work to kind of identify what they license, are there military equivalencies, can we use GI Bill to pay for the fees and the testings and all that stuff. And we have to say that they're doing, the vast majority of boards are doing a great job, and we've gotten a lot of good positive feedback on that. So there'll be a lot of coming on that in the near future. Obviously, the next one that impacts you guys the most is House Bill 48. That bill kind of came out of the higher education side of the executive order and identified a lot of the information that you're talking about today. Military credit transfer, veterans programs on campus. All told, though, it's all about, I was warned not to say this. The director mentioned it, but the reality is veterans education is not an end. It's a doorway. Veterans coming back from overseas, they need to find a job. And while the GI Bill is nice and all and it supports their family for a short time, they need to find that long-term solution. Whether that's a 2-year degree, 4-year, master's, something to get a license certification, that is why they're coming to school. And so that's why we're here. Mike will talk a little bit more about what his office specifically does.
Sure. So, as Danny mentioned, I'm with the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. We were created by executive order January of 2012. And essentially, what we are charged to do is to better coordinate, streamline, align workforce development from a state perspective, working with different state agencies. We have a small staff. There's only 4 of us full-time, and then we have some folks on loan from the Department of Job and Family Services, and also from the Board of Regents as well. So, our office, we recognize that veterans they're a valuable workforce, or a component of our workforce, and we have created 4 kind of key strategies to try to better prioritize how we're going to serve veterans. The first one has to do with 488, awarding credit for military training experience. Like Danny said, the boards and commissions are currently in the process of doing that, and they have some deadlines to meet by the end of the year, and we think they're doing a pretty good job of that. The next is linking employers to veterans, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the Ohio Means Jobs functions here in a little bit, but we have a new, it's a pretty cool tool on Ohio Means Jobs that helps with that. The next is attracting and retaining veterans. So part of this is it's all about messaging and consistent messaging. So one of the parts of House Bill 48 actually charged the Department of Veteran Services to create a centralized website with consistent information about occupational licenses, education, jobs, and also some financial benefits. And Danny will walk through some of that in a little bit. And the last is supporting transitioning veterans. And so that's using some of the state resources we have. Next one. So as I mentioned, Ohio Means Jobs, this is the state's premier job board, and also it's much more than that now. We had a $12 million grant from the Department of Labor where we really kind of increased the different functionality of the website. And essentially, it kind of serves as an online Ohio Means Job Center, or one-stop, as they were formerly called. So if you click on Private Owen, right there, and I think the next slide has the, or no, it doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a number of resources on that website. Yeah, here we go. So there's also, there's information about translating military skills. You type in your occupational code, and it'll give you some potential, jobs that might translate. There's information about the state and federal benefits, education and training information on there too, where to find certain programs around the state. And as part of one of the MBR bills, there'll be a much more robust website in the next few months from the Board of Regents that will actually have career and education inventory online that's searchable. So those are just some of the neat tools. The Veteran Business Support Center, like I mentioned, as it kind of linking employers to veterans. This is a new function of the website that was actually just released about 2 months ago. And since then, we've had 450 companies go on Ohio Means Jobs. And essentially what they do is they'll send out veteran resumes to companies. They'll pre-sort depending on what kind of skills, occupation that certain folks are looking to fill. And so it's a really great tool. We've had, as of last week, we've had 30 veterans that have been hired using this tool. So it's something that we're excited about, and we'll continue to promote.
And I can tell you too, one of the things that I've expressed a significant interest with the Board of Regents, I know Cheryl Hay is essentially the person that's been brought on board at Regents to coordinate a lot of the workforce stuff that they're looking to have the higher education system be able to accomplish. And I've really asked that they talk about this internship and co-op link and make that, because what I don't know is whether or not it's effectively used, or employers using it. Is it a good tool for our career officers at the colleges and universities to be leveraging? But I can tell you that from the standpoint of the Ohio Department of Veteran Services, we now are exclusively marketing Ohio Means Jobs as the portal that we want veterans to go to find work in the state of Ohio. And as we actually are now going to move in, working for me is going to be a new, we'll call it a veteran workforce coordinator. It's not going to be repeating what JFS does, but they're going to be specifically doing outreach to employers that contact us or otherwise get in touch with us. We're going to be talking to them about registering with the Veteran Business Support Center, posting their jobs online, identifying themselves as an employer that wants to hire veterans. And the other thing we're working on together with our National Guard partners is, in workforce transformation, is a state definition of a veteran-friendly employer, or not really a definition, I suppose, but a state recommendation of, you want to be considered a veteran-friendly employer, these are the things we recommend you do. Join Employer Support Guard Reserve, register with the Veteran Business Support Center, establish a veteran employee resource group, things like that nature. We're going to show you a little bit about what we hope the end state of this site will be, so that your career offices and stuff like that at the colleges and universities. One part of 488 is that it asks the colleges and universities to improve how they, let's say, connect veterans on campus to those internships, to those career resources. So we're hoping that this tool will be effective not only for that job seeker, but also anybody that might be, counseling them and stuff like that. So, I'm sorry.
Just one other thing to add about, a neat feature on Ohio Means Jobs is when a veteran actually registers on there, has their resume on there, their information actually rises to the top. Veterans are prioritized in Ohio Means Jobs. So when an employer is looking to find workers, veterans rise to the top. So I thought that was a key to note.
And this is also the tool that all the ones, well, not one stop, the Ohio Means Job Centers, all the folks working for workforce development at JFS, this is the site they're all going to be using. We're working with our National Guard partners. And one thing that's been interesting is that we're seeing a lot of the federal, the federal government used to have this Heroes to Hired thing, which was their transition site for separating service members. Well, and it's kind of getting folded into this e-benefits portal, which is massive and has lots of information on it. And from my point of view, as an Ohioan, isn't really relevant to Ohio employers and to Ohio veterans. And so we're really seeking that this will be the tool that we want an Ohio veteran. And when we do outreach with the Department of Defense, and we keep working with them to try to get more and more opportunities to communicate to our particular active component service members, this is what we're telling them about. And we're hoping to have more comprehensive information. So by the end of the year, this is what, when you click on Private Owen, when you click on Private Owen, it takes you to a very good site. Vets can do their resume skills translator. By the end of the year, this is the site it will land on. And we have it kind of divided into 4 main areas for the job seeker: licensing, employment, education, and finance. For a lot of the work that you guys are doing, there's going to fall under the education block. But ideally, this will be something that is, if you're a veteran and you're in a transition office, or you're exploring your transition and you're sitting at your computer, that these are the 4 blocks that we think will mean the most to that veteran as far as making that, whatever the economic, the job decision, whatever factors into their decision to come back to Ohio. We'll also have 2 blocks, obviously, for employers related to the Veteran Business Support Center and to help search veteran resumes. For the licensing piece, essentially, this is just a mock-up of what the site will look like. Ideally, what will happen is you click on licensing, and a drop box will come down, and for all 36 or 37 or 38 or so agencies that have some form of licensing, we're requiring each one of them to establish an independent website with details of their agency's licensing procedures and forms and anything of that nature related to their veteran and military licensing, and they're going to have their own site on here. So It should be very simple for the veteran to click on licensing, jump on there and say, okay, here's the Board of Embalmers, and I'm gonna be a funeral director. So here's their site, and I can get comprehensive information on what they're doing. From an employment standpoint, it'll take them to the Ohio Means Jobs Veterans page that Mike was describing. One of the really things that's really neat about what they've helped devise, and this has been a side benefit of all of this legislation and all this policy, is that there's no law that says JFS and Ohio Means Jobs need to change this website. But because of the focus on employment and education, it's just been part of, we have to do it. Because what's the point of getting all the colleges on board with what we're doing, getting all the license certification boards if there's not an effective way to communicate? So we've been able to had some success with them improving the Ohio Means Jobs site. You talk about that skills translator. What it will do is, so you enter in 42 Alpha, personnel specialist with the Army. It'll pull up certain skills that that position entails, but it'll do it in civilianese, for lack of a better term. And it'll do it in a way where the veteran can click on the phrase and drag it over to the resume, so that the veteran doesn't have to reword it. It just pulls up, this is what Ohio's employers say they're looking for as far as a civilian job skill, and they'll be able to drag that directly into their resume. It'll link to the job, give locations of job centers. It'll talk about state of Ohio jobs. Now down here, we also are trying to highlight things like Ensuring Ohio Futures. The insurance industry has come to the state of Ohio and said, we need to hire 26,000 staff between now and the next 7 years or so, just to replace currently or potentially retiring staff to maintain current operations. And they've worked extensively, I know, with colleges and universities, trying to establish insurance-related education programs and things of that nature. But we hope to be able to feature industry-specific sector alliances and things like that in that page. Education. Someone clicks on here, the first thing they're going to see is the Valuing Ohio Veterans site link. So that'll take people to where the toolkit is, the information about how to establish veteran programs office, all the information that's in that toolkit, the various reports will be the first link that they'll be able to go to. Then we'll have information about various GI Bill programs. And also, this is an interesting one, Get Skills to Work. It's industry-led, but it's really college-driven. Get Skills to Work, if you're not familiar with it, is a specific partnership that was piloted by GE Aviation with Cincinnati State Community and Technical College, where a conglomerate of manufacturing companies in Southwest Ohio got together with Cincinnati State, and they said, we're going to establish these types of manufacturing programs, and folks that graduate, or veterans who graduate from that program, are guaranteed interviews and positions at these various manufacturing companies in Southwest Ohio. A very beneficial program, and one we'd like to ideally see repeated.
So yeah, just in closing, I've been working on veterans issues for about 2 years now, and I think there's been significant progress. And while we still have a lot to do, I think we can build upon some of the strengths in the efforts of House Bill 488, and working together with our state agencies. I see our National Guard friends in the back, that they've been instrumental on helping us move forward some succinct, consistent statewide policies for veterans and